Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Dana Scranton, and welcome to Entrepreneurs Without Limits. Well, today is a continuation of our series on Outwitting the Devil. And today, in episode 3, we're going to be covering this topic, the sixth sense, and very important in Napoleon Hill's journey. So let's get right into it. And we're going to cover a little background leading up to this, and then this will lead us into other important elements of his journey and what he has written that teaches us how to lead a more fulfilling life. Let me see if I can pull that up. There we go. Okay. So the book, Outwitting the Devil, as I've said in the past sessions, is a book that was released to publication in 2011, but it was actually completed in 1938. It wasn't published because the family, most notably Hill's wife, did not want it published because of the content. The content was controversial back in the 30s, and as a matter of fact, it is controversial today. This book, despite the date of its original penning, remains absolutely relevant here in the 21st century. So today we're going to be talking about the sixth sense. Now, Napoleon Hill quotes, "Somewhere in the cell structure of the brain is located an organ which receives vibrations of thought ordinarily called hunches." Now, this is a very important statement that he makes. You have to go back into the 1930s and before that, a couple of decades to understand what he's really talking about here. This was before the pineal gland or any other elements of the psychic self were really thoroughly understood. Leading up to those days, not so far back, if you came forward with the ability or the hunch to predict or to say that I have encountered an energy source that gives me the ability to perceive, to receive advice from beyond the mortal world, you would probably have been burned at the stake. But at this particular time in the 20th century, the New Thought movement had taken hold. That New Thought movement began in the late 1800s and moved on into the 1900s. And in fact, one of the most notable books for entrepreneurs, which is The Science of Getting Rich, written by Wallace D. Wattles, was a book that was founded on those very beliefs, the New Thought movement. And it contains a lot of information that undoubtedly Napoleon Hill read. And it perhaps um, guided him and influenced his journey. But what is important about this quotation is we're talking about the sixth sense. And Napoleon Hill encountered that and he wrote about it. And Outwitting the Devil was based on that very event in his life. So Hill's journey. Well, Napoleon Hill's journey began way back when, 1908, when he had his first meeting with Andrew Carnegie. And it was there that he approached Andrew and said, "Look, I'm thinking about a way to fund my law school education." He had designs on becoming a lawyer. And he said, "I want to write about successful people, what made them successful, teach others how to do that. And that's how I'll fund my law school education." Well, that was very good. And Andrew Carnegie said, "Look, I commend you for that, but let me give you a different idea along the same lines." He said, "You need to go out and not only find out what made them successful, but you need to find out what failures they encountered along the way, because failures teach you more than success ever will. If all you ever do is experience success, you're probably not succeeding to the magnitude that you're capable of because failures teach you a lot. But failures also do something else. They challenge your inner strength, they challenge your faith, they challenge your belief. And in Hill's journey, that in fact is exactly what happened. Now, his journey to his interview with the devil was a tortuous path of success, failure, fear, faith, and enlightenment. He was up and down, depressed, excited, happy, sad. I mean, he went through the whole gamut of emotions and physical stress and elation. This man was on a mission, but the mission he was on was not necessarily of his own doing. Now, along the way, he came across a sixth sense. He called it the other self. It was during this journey, this fighting within himself to overcome his fear, to overcome his apathy, to overcome the person he had become that was absolutely contrary and the opposite of the person who laid down the whole idea of the law of success. And that state that he was in was at the very bottom of his life, the very bottom of the journey. He was in the trough of despair when he encountered his other self. Now, that state of being, encountering your other self or the sixth sense, when that is encountered through the kind of emotional engagement that he experienced, I would contend that you open a portal to consciousness, and that facilitates ongoing communications. And it did so for him, and it was beyond his comprehension. In his writings, he said, I still don't understand what it is or how it works. All I know is that I follow its advice and it works. Now, beyond that, he also had many encounters where he had discussions with many notable figures of the age, most notably Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb. And I'm not going to go into that. That's a subject for another time, another episode. But the point being is he became engaged beyond the material world. I don't know how else to put it. And that engagement, that portal that he opened, continued to serve him through his life. Now, the sixth sense, and we've all heard of it, right? I mean, you've heard, I had a sixth sense, or that dog has a sixth sense. It's a mode of perception and more. You see, the sixth sense is a mode of perception, but it's a gateway to information and direction. That information and direction sometimes is called intuition, feeling, and various other things, but it's beyond what you would have expected. It's something that one day grabs your attention and you wonder how that ever came to you. Sometimes it's subtle and other times it's bold, and it comes in the form of a thought or a feeling or some other unusual energy that you perceive. And it connects with your subconscious and conscious to suggest to you a direction, to say, pay attention to this little detail. That perception, that sixth sense, is in essence a knock on the door, inviting you to receive potentially life-changing information. Now, we are all familiar with the five senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. These are the physical senses that we encounter every day. But beyond that, there are a few more. Okay? There's proprioception, the awareness of your body position. In other words, that physical energy, how you determine where your body position is and how that feels. Balance. You have a sense of balance. This can be influenced by your physical state, your emotional state, mental state. It's something that you pay attention to when it becomes critical to you, but it's also something that you should pay attention to when it's not. Temperature sensing, it beyond touch. You sense temperature, you radiate energy from a heater, or you step outside. And it's easy to say, well, isn't that just similar to touch? It's nerve endings sensing something. Yes, but you sense temperature. Pain. Pain is physical, but you sense it. That internal sensing, hunger, breathing, that energy form that kind of makes your stomach feel a little funny. You see, we have many other senses. And those senses become activated when you pay attention to that sixth sense. They're always there. You always feel them. But the subtleties, the very minute changes are the things that are directing you to pay attention to that sixth sense. Now, new knowledge comes about through this sixth sense and through what Napoleon Hill called his other self. The nature of the thought that is transmitted, it may be in the form of new knowledge that's helpful or necessary to fulfilling your defined purpose or other critical objective or need you may have. It's not always, as I said earlier, coming through in a big booming voice. Sometimes it's a hunch, it's a feeling, it's a strange vibration or strange energy that has you wondering, what was that all about? The key to using it is to be responsive to that thought or feeling. And here's why. If you dismiss these thoughts, these feelings, these subtleties, basically what you're telling your subconscious mind is ignore all of that. Now, that energy is always there. That communication, that portal is open. Once you've opened it, it remains open. But what you can do is put so much noise in there that you'll never hear it. This is what Napoleon Hill eventually determined. Now, you can read between the lines of his dialogue in the various books that he's written and see that at one point he heard the voice, he heard the advice, he got the direction, but he covered it up with other life priorities, distractions, various other activities in his life, problems. And it was still there when he needed it the most, but in between, it was not apparent to him. So pay attention, be very humble to those tiny feelings, those tiny perceptions, those little things that seem a bit odd. Take the moment to sit into them and understand them and see if, in fact, it's a message. Now, there's other terms that are used when describing this phenomenon. Napoleon Hill, of course, called it his other self. There's intuition, gut feeling, hunch, as we've already said, inner knowing, strange feelings, instinct. These are all the kind of things that you may say, oh man, I had this weird feeling that was going to happen. Okay, when you had that weird feeling, did you stop and think about it? Go in the moment and say, what does this mean? That's the essence of how to use this sixth sense. Now, much has been written about the source of the sixth sense, the energy source, the portal, if you will, to the consciousness, the infinite consciousness, the infinite intelligence. And it's not well known. I mean, it's not like we can open a book and say, there it is, there's the formula, and this is how it's done. Perhaps we'll get close to that someday, but right now it really comes down to faith and belief that this energy source, this form of communication exists, and taking advantage of that to connect with it. Now, some will claim it's the subconscious mind connecting already stored information with a new impulse. What does that mean? Well, it means as you go through life, you read, you hear, you see, you experience, and all of that gets processed in your subconscious mind and stored away. And it gets combined in various ways and put in different folders. And then one day, when a situation arises, the inputs to you trigger your subconscious filing system to go pull out some things here and there and combine them and hand you this new thought. That's entirely possible. In fact, I think that's a very viable reason for some of the hunches and ideas that we get. But there are others who assert that this is a library of knowing, of knowledge, timeless and multidimensional, that lives in the realm of the infinite intelligence. And that once you connect with that, it then downloads to you at a frequency that is resonant with your thoughts, your emotional state. So if you have positive thoughts, belief and faith and energy behind those thoughts, as if you owned or are experiencing the very thing you want in life, that it resonates, and the information that is relevant to that state flows to you. That's another interpretation of it. The receptive state. How do you be receptive? Now, I've alluded to this here just in the past few minutes. But we become more aware of the sixth sense when we're in a heightened emotional state. It's positive, negative, love, desire, joy, anger, or stress. Okay, we can become aware of it. Either side of that hilltop. On this side of the hill, you've got positive vibrations. On the other side of the hill, you got negative vibrations. Now, some will say that if you have negative energy, you block it. I don't believe that to be true. I think what happens is you set up a resonance, a negative frequency resonance, negative energy, and that's what infinite intelligence downloads you. It says, oh, that's the state you want to be in. That's what's important to you. All righty, here's a little more to add to it. So consequently, you can probably amplify your demise if you're not careful. On the positive side, which, by the way, is one of the most difficult things for people to do. Put aside negative thoughts, negative comments, negative words, negative energy, and stay focused on the positive, the optimistic, the belief, the faith. And it's not saying that you're dismissing the existence of negativity, that you're dismissing the existence of problems and other issues. All you're saying to yourself is, no, I'm going to deal with the things that I can control. I can control my thoughts. I can control my actions because my thoughts lead to my actions. I can delay that extra 1 or 2 seconds before opening my mouth in a situation. You can control these things and maintain a positive state. You can learn to suppress that negativity that comes over to you, that resentment or the fear, as you sit back and say, wait a minute, is there really anything to be afraid of here? Is there really anything to resent? I am in control. See what I mean? Being in that state, the energy and chemistry of emotion somehow enhances and amplifies the sixth sense. And if you're aware of that, if you're looking for it, that message will appear. And then, like I said, the nature of the message may be aligned with the nature of the emotion. So be very aware and conscious of what you're doing with your mind. And that is what Napoleon Hill found. He found that in several different ways. As a matter of fact, as you read the book, Outwitting the Devil, you'll see that Napoleon Hill went through several different variants of his opinion of what the other self was, ultimately arriving at his interview with the devil. That interview with the devil then expanded upon this ethereal connection he had in a very powerful way. It's the very core of that book. So, translation. Messages arrive in few forms, really: thought, images, emotions, and feelings, but they're subtle. Very seldom are they loud and booming. Most of the time, they are subtle. When it comes to thoughts, a thought can be like that. It went right through your mind. It can also be something that's a recurring thought. Images. We think in pictures, mostly, at least I do. Well, that's also how the infinite intelligence, if you will, communicates. There have been many documented situations where people have sat down and written about what they encountered in their connection with the infinite intelligence. And very oftentimes, the thought process as a communication is graphic. It's in pictures. Forming a picture, boom, 1,000 words are communicated. So images are critical. Those may come in strange ways. You have to be aware of the unusual. Is that different than what I normally encounter? And then finally, emotions and feelings, that hunch, that gut feeling, that shiver you get, the sudden, I'm uncomfortable with a particular situation or something like that. These are things you have to pay attention to because they may be exactly that sixth sense going to work for you. So, turning on the sixth sense, key points: deliberate expectations of interaction with the sixth sense. In other words, you believe and you have faith in the fact that there is a sixth sense, that other self, that portal to the infinite intelligence, and that you are tuned into it. You just haven't turned on the radio. Turning on the radio. Focused, sustained, emotionalized thoughts directed towards attainment of your definite purpose, desire, or most pressing need. It is foremost on your mind. It is what you think about all the time. And if you go back again to The Science of Getting Rich with Wattles, he impresses upon the reader that you have to stay focused. It has to be foremost on your mind, what it is your mission, your objective, your desire is. Now, Napoleon Hill calls that a definite purpose with definiteness. In other words, you have your definite purpose in your mind. You see it, you feel it, you taste it, you hear it, all of the senses, you know, inside your body, outside your body. And in the process, you envision in your mind what it would be like to be living with that purpose achieved, the contribution you make to the rest of the world, which, by the way, is very important because a selfish objective will not yield sound communication with this sixth sense. You know, this infinite intelligence, if you read enough about it, and I got to be honest with you, it's sometimes difficult to find all the sources to read about. It is very interested in you bringing energy experiences to that side. In other words, the human existence, the human experience is a very rare and cherished thing for the soul, so to speak. And they very much want you to experience that and help them feel it on that side. That them may be you, it may be your relatives. And yeah, that's sounding a little ethereal, but bear with me because if you read enough about it, you'll understand this is what Napoleon Hill was encountering in his words. Okay. But that focus, sustained thought is key. Shut out distractions and negativity. You have to be deliberate. You have to learn not to resonate with negativity. Now, as an example, if you were in a relationship, in a family, or a job where people are always griping about something, it's very difficult for you to just get up and walk out. Instead, what you have to do is just kind of go inside. Don't be rude, but question it. Why is this important to me? It's not. Boom, that's your answer. You don't have to tell them, why is that important to me? And make them angry. You can process it inside, keep a smile on your face or no smile if the situation calls for it. Ask questions, ponder it, but don't sit on it. Don't assume the negative state. Be open and sensitive to those subtle messages. Now, I've pounded on this a few times in this session today. They may appear during or after a focus session. In other words, you sit down and you focus, you've got a mastermind, or you're writing in your journal, whatever you're doing, but it will come when you least expect a communication because your thoughts are so focused on doing something. If you're in a focus session like writing or in a meeting, and sometimes that's sending out the necessary information and it comes back to you when you least expect it. You're done doing what you're doing, you're off eating, you're doing something, and all of a sudden, boom, that thought pops into your mind. Grab it right then. Because every time you grab it, it keeps that pathway open and amplifies it. So the lesson. What Hill has taught is emotional engagement with the trials and tribulations and experiences, both positive and negative, is key to opening the portal to the sixth sense. Your life is a journey, and that journey is punctuated with experiences. It's made rich through those experiences. And some of those experiences are positive, some are negative. Some are emotionally charged, and some are something you wish never happened. But each and every experience brings with it the seed of a new experience, something that you have more control over, that is more beneficial to you, and which produces a richer and more open communication through the portal that I've described. So be involved in your life. Understand that everything that happens in your life is maybe not of your doing, but it is of your control and your thoughts, how you perceive, how to process it, and how to use the experience. Faith, belief, and resolute focus on your definiteness of purpose combine to bring that other self or sixth sense onto your team. Yes, your team. Me, myself, and I as a team, but also the sixth sense, the other self, as Napoleon Hill calls it, is part of your team. And the sooner that you accept that you have a team and that that team member is sometimes silent, sometimes not, but always there, the better off you'll be. Now, that's the lesson that comes to us from Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil when he wants to communicate the sixth sense. So that's critical. So be deliberate and consistent. Use mental imagery to attach emotional significance to the desired outcome. Now, I've gone over that several times. I just want to repeat it here. Okay. Put a picture in your mind of what it is you want. Do not, negative words, do not put a picture in your mind of what you don't want. Some people think that by picturing what they don't want implies what they do want. No, the subconscious mind and this portal, the other self, are very, very, how would you put it, literal. They don't want to. They don't want to have to decide whether you mean it positive or negative. They're going to take the energy form and go with it. So when you say, "Well, I don't want this job anymore," well, they may help you get out of the job, but they ain't going to help you get into a new one. But if you envision what you want in a job, what you want in a life and a career, then it will help you get from one job to another. Now, once again, referencing Wallace Wattles and the Science of Getting Rich, one of the things that he says there that is oh so critical, and in fact, Napoleon Hill practices this. You just have to read between the lines. No matter what job you find yourself in, no matter what situation you find yourself in, live it as if it is part of the thing that you want most in your life. Treat it like you're actually experiencing it. Find the handles and the experiences and all of the different things that you can bring into your mind that help you do that job or execute that experience, while at the same time seeing it as part of what gets you where you want to go. Here's another point. Ask for guidance or information from the sixth sense. You've heard the old saying, if you don't ask, you don't get. Well, that in part is what's going on here. And how do you ask? Well, you can ask vocally, give it a name. You can call it God. Many people do. Others will call it infinite self, infinite intelligence, other self. I don't know, maybe some people give it a name. Ask for help. Put the picture in your mind of what you want, why you want it, the benefit it brings to you and others, and ask for guidance and information on how to achieve it. If you don't ask, you don't get. But here's another critical thing. Be very careful. Excuse me. Be very careful. It's not just your words and thoughts that communicate. It's what you do with your body. If you are communicating with the other self and you're slouched over, kind of in a state of, yeah, why am I really here? That body communication communicates in the form of your bodily energy. Yeah, we're getting a little off the rails here, but the fact is that when you think of the word self-talk, the term self-talk, you all know what that means. How you talk to yourself. You want to talk to yourself positive, politely, encouraging. Well, that talk doesn't just come in the form of words, it also comes in body language. Your subconscious is reading your body language, it's reading your words, the tone of your voice. It's reading all of that, and so is the sixth sense. So you need to really keep mindful that you can write, you can speak, you can use your body, you can do everything positive, and it will be more of an advantage to you than if you try to speak positive while you have a slouched negative position. So write and or speak like affirmations of gratitude for already having that which you desire in the future. Mental imagery, as I've said many times here, is important, but that emotional energy is most important, because emotional energy engages the necessary organ in your body, in your mind, in the ethereal connection that makes things happen. So take action. The sixth sense is not so much a sense as it is a gateway to information and direction. It is a partner. It is part of your team, and you have to appreciate that it has multiple dimensions. But all of those dimensions combine and align to help you if you listen and act. Once you perceive or detect that you've been communicated with, take action. Take some form of action. Write it down. Think about it, internalize it, associate it, memorize it, sit into it and enjoy the feeling. Whatever it is, take action. Okay, so that's our episode today. And I think when you think about it, the sixth sense is a very powerful friend. It's a very powerful team member. And accept it. Have faith, have belief, and whatever your religious convictions may be, it's the same language. Okay, there is a spiritual guide, an angel, uh, someone, something that is watching over you. You just have to accept and allow it in. Now, I'm being very general because we deal with a very general audience across the world. Okay. And as I've said in some of my other episodes, everyone is a natural entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur has a mission, and that is to identify and understand the needs of others, and with faith, courage, conviction, and resourcefulness, connect them with a means of fulfilling their needs. That's what an entrepreneur does. And so your state of mind, your state of being, and your connection with your team member through that portal to infinite intelligence, as Napoleon Hill calls it, the other self, is a very vital part of that entrepreneurial mission. So I hope you found this beneficial and useful today. And if so, please leave a comment. I would appreciate it. And with that said, we will then see you in episode 4. Take care, and we'll see you out there on that exciting frontier of possibilities.